Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally show you exactly where you stand in their priorities. I learned this lesson in the most painful way possible when I was lying alone in a hospital bed, broken ribs making every breath agony, while my parents were 300 miles away celebrating my brother's real estate award. That night changed everything between us. But what happened 3 months later, when they came crawling back desperate for my life savings to bail him out of a fraud scandal, showed me who they really were. Before I tell you about that defining night, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real stories from life. Because what happens next will forever change the relationship in my family. Let me paint you a picture of my family dynamics first. I am Brooke, 28 years old, working as an accountant here in Denver, Colorado. I have always been the responsible one, the one who flew under the radar, while my older brother Jason commanded all the attention. Jason is 31, charming, ambitious, and has been the golden child since we were kids. He works in real estate down in Phoenix, where my parents live, and they could not be prouder of their son, the successful businessman. Growing up, the favoritism was not even subtle. When Jason wanted to go to Arizona State University, Mom and Dad paid his full tuition, bought him a car, and gave him a monthly allowance. When I graduated high school 2 years later, with better grades, I was told the family had stretched themselves thin for Jason, and I would need to find my own way. So I did. I worked 2 jobs through community college, transferred to University of Colorado, and graduated debt-free through sheer determination. After college, I moved to Denver and slowly built my life. I bought a modest 2-bedroom house in Lakewood, drove a reliable Honda Civic that I purchased used and lived below my means. Over 6 years of careful budgeting and working overtime whenever possible, I had managed to save $80,000. Not a fortune, but enough to feel secure and maybe take that European vacation I had been dreaming about since college. Jason, meanwhile, had started his own real estate company with a $50,000 loan from our parents. They mortgaged their house to help him, something they reminded me of constantly during family gatherings. He specialized in luxury properties around Scottsdale and Phoenix, driving a white BMW and wearing expensive suits. His Instagram was full of photos from golf courses and upscale restaurants. My parents shared every single post. The contrast was stark during holidays. Jason would arrive with stories of 6-figure commissions and celebrity clients, while I quietly mentioned my promotion to senior accountant or the new client I had landed. Dad would pat Jason on the back and talk about his business acumen. Mom would ask me when I planned to get married and settle down as if my career was just killing time. Friday, November 15th started like any other day. I was working late at the office, finishing up quarterly reports for 3 different small businesses. My boss had asked me to take on extra clients because he trusted my attention to detail. The overtime pay was decent, and I was saving for a down payment on a newer car. By 8:30 p.m., I was finally heading home. The weather had turned nasty during the afternoon. What started as a light drizzle became a steady downpour, and the temperature had dropped enough to make the roads slick. Interstate 25 was particularly treacherous, but I had driven it thousands of times. I was careful staying in the right lane, maintaining safe distance from other vehicles. I never saw the pickup truck coming. Later, the police told me the driver had been drinking at a bar in downtown Denver. He was doing 70 in a 45-zone hydroplaned on the wet asphalt and crossed the median straight into oncoming traffic. Straight into me. The impact was immediate and devastating. 1 second, I was singing along to Taylor Swift on the radio. The next, I was hanging upside down, suspended by my seatbelt, with blood running down my face. My left arm was twisted at an unnatural angle, and every breath felt like knives in my chest. The world went black. I woke up in Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital, with a doctor explaining that I had suffered a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a compound fracture of my left radius. I would recover completely, but I would be hospitalized for at least 4 days for observation and pain management. The nurse, a kind woman named Patricia, helped me call my emergency contacts. My hands were shaking as I dialed my parents' number. Mom answered on the third ring, and I could hear the television in the background. When I told her about the accident, she gasped and immediately started crying. Dad got on the phone, his voice tight with worry, asking if I was okay and which hospital I was in. For a moment, I felt that warm rush of being loved and cared for. Then reality set in. Tomorrow was Saturday, and Jason was receiving the Rising Star Award from the Phoenix Metro Association of Realtors at their annual conference in San Diego. It was a big deal. He had been nominated for selling over $10 million worth of property in his first 5 years, and the award came with a $25,000 bonus check. Our parents had planned this trip for months. Mom was torn. I could hear the conflict in her voice as she explained the situation. They had already paid for flights and hotel reservations. Jason was so excited, and this was the biggest moment of his career so far. But their daughter was in the hospital. She promised they would drive up first thing Sunday morning, right after the ceremony ended. Lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, and listening to machines beep around me, I told myself it was reasonable. The accident was not life-threatening. I would be here for several days anyway. One more day would not make a difference, and Jason had worked so hard for this recognition. I was being selfish to expect them to miss it. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the hospital windows. My ribs ached with every movement, and my left arm was immobilized in a complicated brace that ran from my fingertips to my shoulder. The pain medication made me drowsy, but I could not really sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw headlights rushing toward me. The first visitor was Sarah, my coworker and closest friend in Denver. She brought coffee from our favorite cafe and a stack of magazines, settling into the uncomfortable chair beside my bed like she planned to stay all day. We had worked together for 3 years, and she knew me well enough to see past my attempts to downplay how much pain I was in. Marcus, my next-door neighbor, stopped by around noon with homemade soup from his wife, Carmen. He was a retired firefighter who had seen his share of car accidents, and he did not try to minimize what I had been through. He just sat quietly, occasionally making me laugh with stories about his grandchildren. Emma, my college roommate who lived in Boulder, drove down Saturday evening with a bag full of comfort items, fuzzy socks, lip balm, phone chargers, and a small stuffed elephant that we had won at a carnival junior year. She knew hospitals were cold and impersonal, and she wanted to make my corner of the world a little more human. What struck me most was how present these friends were. They looked me in the eyes when they talked. They asked specific questions about my pain levels and treatment plan. Sarah even took notes so she could update our other coworkers. Marcus offered to check on my house and water my plants. Emma rearranged her weekend plans to stay until Sunday evening. Meanwhile, my phone stayed mostly silent. Around 4 p.m. Saturday, I made the mistake of checking social media. Jason had posted a photo from the hotel lobby in San Diego, him and our parents dressed up for the awards dinner. Mom was wearing the blue dress she had bought specifically for this occasion. Dad had his arm around Jason, both of them grinning broadly. The caption read, "Ready to watch my son make history tonight. So proud of this young man." The comments poured in from extended family and family friends. Aunt Margaret wrote, "You raised an amazing son, Linda." Our neighbor from Phoenix added, "Jason is going places." "You must be so proud." Cousin Daniel chimed in with, "Way to go, Jason. The family champion." I scrolled through 47 comments. Not one person mentioned that I was in the hospital. Not one person knew. The award ceremony was being live streamed, and against my better judgment, I watched it on my phone. Jason looked handsome in his black tuxedo, confident as he walked to the podium when his name was called. Mom was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, and Dad was applauding enthusiastically. The presenter talked about Jason's innovative marketing strategies and his commitment to client satisfaction. When Jason gave his acceptance speech, he thanked God, his mentors, his clients, and his amazing parents who had supported his dreams from day one. He held up the crystal trophy, and dedicated the award to everyone who believed in me when I was just a kid with big dreams. The camera panned to our parents, who were beaming with pride. He did not mention me. Of course he did not mention me. Why would he? I was not part of his success story. I was just the sister who chose a practical career and a quiet life. But what hurt most was not Jason's omission. It was seeing my parents so completely absorbed in his moment that they seemed to have forgotten I existed. This was supposed to be a family celebration, but I was not family in any way that mattered. I was an afterthought, a minor inconvenience to be dealt with later. The phone call came during the reception around 9 p.m. California time. I could hear music and laughter in the background when Dad answered. His voice was jovial, slightly slurred from champagne. "Brooke, sweetheart, how are you feeling?" The question was perfunctory, like asking about the weather. Before I could answer more than, "I am okay," he was already talking about the ceremony. Jason had given an incredible speech. The award was beautiful. The networking opportunities were amazing. 3 different real estate firms had already approached Jason about partnerships. Mom took the phone, and I could hear her laughing with someone else even as she spoke to me. "Oh, honey, you should have seen him up there. He looked so handsome and professional. I took about 100 photos. The whole ballroom gave him a standing ovation." Then Jason got on the line, his voice bright with excitement and alcohol. "Brooke, this is unbelievable. The bonus check is for $25,000. $25,000. I am thinking about using it as a down payment on that property in Paradise Valley I have been eyeing. Can you believe it?" He talked for several minutes about his plans for the money, his networking conversations, and the potential business deals on the horizon. Finally, almost as an afterthought, he asked, "So you are doing okay, right? You can take care of yourself." The call lasted 8 minutes total. 6 minutes about Jason's triumph, 2 minutes of cursory questions about my condition. When we hung up, I stared at the phone in disbelief. I had been in a serious car accident less than 24 hours ago, and my family was treating it like a minor inconvenience that should not interfere with their celebration. Patricia, the nurse who had been taking care of me, noticed my expression when she came in for evening medication. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who had seen everything. "Family troubles?" she asked gently, checking my IV. I found myself telling her about the phone call, about my parents' priorities, about feeling invisible and unimportant. She listened without judgment, nodding occasionally. "I have a son about your age," she said finally. "He is gay, and when he came out, my husband's family basically wrote him off. They still invited us to family events, but they acted like David did not exist. It took me too long to realize that if they could not love my son for who he was, they did not deserve either of us." She adjusted my pillows and continued, "Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest, but that says everything about them and nothing about your worth." Sunday came and went without a visit from my parents. They called around noon to explain that Jason was feeling sick from all the excitement and celebration, so they wanted to make sure he was okay before driving to Denver. They would definitely be there Monday. Monday became Tuesday because of a family emergency that turned out to be Jason's BMW needing repairs after he backed into a pole at the hotel. Tuesday became Wednesday because Mom had come down with a migraine. Wednesday became Thursday because of work obligations Dad could not reschedule. By the time I was discharged on Thursday afternoon, they still had not come. They had, however, posted 6 more photos from their extended weekend in San Diego, including shots of them touring Balboa Park and having brunch in La Jolla. Jason looked perfectly healthy in all of them. I drove myself home in a rental car, my left arm still in a brace, and tried to process what had just happened. My own parents had chosen a weekend vacation over visiting their injured daughter in the hospital. The message was crystal clear. I did not matter enough to interrupt their plans. Over the next few weeks, they called regularly to check on my recovery, but the conversations felt hollow. They shared updates about Jason's new business prospects and the contacts he had made at the conference. They seemed genuinely puzzled when I became short and distant with them. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Angela Martinez to work through the trauma of the accident and the emotional aftermath. She helped me recognize patterns I'd been ignoring for years. The favoritism was not new. I had just gotten very good at minimizing and excusing it. During our sessions, I began to understand that my value to my family was conditional. I was loved and included when it was convenient, when it did not conflict with Jason's needs or achievements. But when push came to shove, I was expendable. I started to withdraw from family group chats and holiday planning. When they asked why I seemed distant, I tried to explain how their absence during my hospitalization had affected me. Mom got defensive, insisting they had been worried sick and would have come if it had been more serious. Dad accused me of being dramatic and holding grudges. Jason, meanwhile, was riding high on his award win. He had indeed purchased that property in Paradise Valley and was renovating it to flip for a significant profit. His social media was full of construction updates and business networking events. He tagged our parents in posts about family support and believing in your dreams. The irony was not lost on me. Jason was building his empire with family money and emotional support while I had built mine alone. But somehow his success mattered more because it was flashier, more visible, more impressive to outsiders. 3 months after the accident, I had physically healed, but emotionally I was still processing the betrayal. I had returned to work, but I found myself questioning everything about my relationship with my family. Sarah noticed that I stopped mentioning them in conversation. Marcus asked why they never visited when I lived less than a day's drive away. Then everything changed. On a Tuesday morning in February, I was having coffee and reading the news when I saw a headline that made my blood run cold: Phoenix real estate agent under federal investigation for fraud. The accompanying photo showed Jason in handcuffs being led into a courthouse. I called Mom immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed. She answered on the first ring, her voice raw from crying. "Oh, Brooke, thank God you called. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. Some clients are accusing Jason of misappropriating funds from their escrow accounts. It is completely false, but the FBI is involved, and they froze his bank accounts." The details emerged slowly over the next few hours through a series of frantic phone calls. Jason had been using client escrow funds to finance his property flips, always intending to pay the money back before closing dates. For a while it had worked. His flips were successful, and he was able to replace the borrowed funds without anyone noticing. But his latest project, a luxury home renovation in Paradise Valley, had hit unexpected complications. Structural problems added months to the timeline and doubled the budget. Jason had already spent the escrow money and could not replace it by the scheduled closing dates. When clients tried to access their funds for other transactions, the accounts were empty. 5 families had lost their earnest money deposits totaling $300,000. Some of them were first-time homebuyers who had saved for years. Others were families trying to downsize after retirement. All of them had trusted Jason with their most important financial transaction, and he had betrayed that trust. The FBI investigation revealed a pattern of poor record-keeping, commingled accounts, and increasingly desperate attempts to rob Peter to pay Paul. Jason was facing multiple felony charges and potentially 5 to 7 years in federal prison. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday night in March. I was sound asleep when my phone rang, the harsh sound cutting through my dreams and jolting me awake. Dad's name appeared on the screen, and I knew immediately that something was very wrong. "Brooke, sweetie, I know it is late, but we need your help." Or his voice was thick with exhaustion and desperation, so different from the confident man who had raised me. "Jason's lawyer says if we can raise $150,000 for legal fees and partial restitution, they might be able to work out a plea deal that keeps him out of prison." I sat up in bed, my heart racing. Through my bedroom window, I could see snow falling gently in the glow of the streetlights. Denver was quiet and peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos my father was describing. We have already mortgaged the house again and borrowed against Dad's retirement. Mom's voice came through the speaker, shaky and desperate. My sister loaned us $20,000 and your Uncle Mike gave us $15,000. We sold Jason's BMW and some of Mom's jewelry, but we are still $80,000 short and time is running out. The number hit me like a physical blow. $80,000, almost exactly what I had saved over 6 years of careful budgeting and sacrifice. This was not a coincidence. They knew exactly how much I had in savings because I had mentioned it during a Christmas phone call 2 years ago. We know it is a lot to ask, Dad continued, but you are the only person we know who has that kind of money available. Jason's whole future is at stake here. If he goes to prison, his life is over. His real estate license will be revoked, his reputation will be destroyed, and he will never recover from this. I found myself standing in my kitchen, pacing back and forth on the cold tile floor in my bare feet. My mind was reeling, trying to process what they were asking me to do. They wanted me to give up 6 years of my life savings to fix Jason's mistakes. I know he made errors in judgment, Mom said, her voice breaking. But he is not a bad person, Brooke. He just got in over his head trying to build something successful. You know how hard he has worked, how much he has accomplished. One mistake should not destroy everything. But it was not one mistake. As the conversation continued, more details emerged. Jason had been taking money from client accounts for over a year. He had falsified documents to hide the discrepancies. He had lied to investors, to banks, and to his own family about the state of his business. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a sustained pattern of criminal behavior. He wants to make things right, Dad insisted. The restitution money will go directly to the families he hurt, and he has promised to work the rest of his life to pay back every penny of the legal fees. This is not asking for a handout. It is asking for a loan that will save our son's life. Over the next 2 weeks, the pressure was relentless. They called every day, sometimes multiple times. Mom would cry on the phone, begging me to think about family loyalty. Dad would get angry, accusing me of abandoning my brother when he needed me most. Jason wrote me a 12-page letter from jail, apologizing for his mistakes and promising to change his life if I would just give him this one chance. The extended family got involved. Aunt Margaret called to tell me that blood is thicker than water and that I would regret it forever if Jason went to prison while I had the power to save him. Cousin Daniel sent long text messages about the importance of sticking together during hard times. Even family friends reached out, people who barely knew me but felt entitled to weigh in on my financial decisions. The manipulation was sophisticated and unrelenting. They painted Jason as a victim of circumstances, a good man who had made bad choices under pressure. They portrayed me as the family savior, the only person who could prevent this tragedy. They alternated between guilt trips and promises, between emotional appeals and logical arguments. But they never once acknowledged the hypocrisy of their request. These were the same people who had chosen a real estate award over visiting me in the hospital. The same people who had never offered to help with my student loans or medical bills. The same people who had mortgaged their house to fund Jason's business, but told me I was on my own for college. Now suddenly I was family. Now suddenly my financial success mattered. Now suddenly I was important enough to drop everything and sacrifice my future for theirs. I stopped sleeping well. The constant phone calls and emotional manipulation left me exhausted and anxious. I took 2 sick days from work because I could not concentrate on anything except this impossible decision. My therapist squeezed in extra sessions to help me work through the psychological pressure. Sarah watched me deteriorate with growing concern. She had never met my family, but she knew enough about our history to recognize what was happening. They are asking you to set yourself on fire to keep Jason warm, she said bluntly during one of our coffee meetings, and they are using emotional manipulation to make you think it is your duty. Marcus offered a different perspective from his front porch one evening, as I watered my plants with my good arm. In my 30 years with the fire department, I learned the difference between saving someone and enabling them, he said quietly. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their choices. But the hardest conversation was with Patricia, my former nurse, whom I had stayed in touch with after my discharge. I called her one evening, when the pressure felt overwhelming, when I was starting to doubt my own instincts. "Honey," she said in that gentle but firm voice I remembered from the hospital, "let me ask you something. If you had been the one who stole money from 5 families who would be calling around begging for help to pay your legal fees?" The silence stretched between us as I considered the question. We both knew the answer. On a cold March morning, I made my decision. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop drafting an email that would forever change my relationship with my family. The words came slowly at first, then faster, as years of suppressed frustration and hurt poured out onto the screen. "Dear Mom, Dad, and Jason," I wrote, "I have given careful consideration to your request for $80,000 to help with Jason's legal situation. After much thought, I have decided that I cannot and will not provide this money." I detailed every instance of favoritism I could remember from childhood to the present: the paid college tuition versus my student loans, the business startup money versus my solo house purchase, the car gifts versus my used Honda, the constant praise for Jason's achievements versus the crickets that greeted mine. But most importantly, I wrote about the hospital. I described those 4 days of lying alone in pain while they celebrated in San Diego. I explained how it felt to watch their social media posts from my hospital bed, to realize that I did not matter enough to interrupt their weekend plans. "You have shown me repeatedly over the years where I stand in this family's hierarchy," I continued. "I am not the golden child whose dreams you fund and whose success you celebrate. I am the backup plan, the safety net you turn to when everything else falls apart. But I refuse to be that person anymore." I explained that my $80,000 represented 6 years of working overtime, skipping vacations, buying generic groceries, and living in a modest house, while Jason enjoyed the finer things in life with family support. This money was not spare cash sitting around. It was my security, my future, and the product of my own hard work. Jason's choices led to this situation, and Jason's consequences are his to face, I wrote. I will not sacrifice my financial stability to clean up his mess, especially not for a family that has never shown the same loyalty to me. I ended the email with a clear boundary. If you continue to pressure me about this money, I will block your phone numbers and cut off all contact. I need space to process how I want to move forward with our relationship. Please respect that boundary. After sending the email, I immediately took action to protect myself. I transferred my savings to a different bank account that my parents had never heard of, changed all my passwords, and updated my emergency contacts at work to list Sarah instead of family. I blocked Jason's phone number and temporarily blocked my parents' numbers as well. The response was swift and predictable. Within hours, my email inbox was flooded with messages from extended family members. Some accused me of being selfish and cold-hearted. Others tried emotional manipulation, sharing stories about family sacrifice and loyalty. A few tried to negotiate, suggesting smaller amounts or payment plans. But I was done negotiating. I was done being the family's emotional and financial dumping ground. For the first time in my adult life, I was putting my own needs first, and it felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. I used some of my savings for that European trip I had been postponing for 5 years. I spent 2 weeks in Italy, eating amazing food, visiting museums, and sleeping in until noon without feeling guilty about it. I posted photos on social media, but I did not tag any family members or respond to their comments. When I returned to Denver, I threw myself into building the life I actually wanted instead of the life I thought would earn my family's approval. I applied for a promotion at work and got it. I started dating again after a long, dry spell. I bought myself a beautiful necklace I had been admiring for months, but felt too guilty to purchase. The Reddit post happened almost by accident. I was browsing the relationships forum one evening, reading other people's family drama, when I decided to share my own story. I wrote a condensed version of what had happened, focusing on the hospital incident and the money request. I hit submit without really expecting much response. The post exploded overnight. 15,000 upvotes and thousands of comments from people sharing their own stories of family favoritism and manipulation. The overwhelming consensus was that I had made the right choice, that my family was toxic, and that I should continue protecting myself. Reading those comments was incredibly validating. For years, I had wondered if I was being too sensitive about my family's treatment. But hundreds of strangers confirmed what I had been feeling. This was not normal family dynamics, and I deserved better. Jason was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. My parents lost their house and moved into a small apartment in a less expensive part of Phoenix. Jason's real estate license was permanently revoked, and he will likely work minimum wage jobs for years, trying to pay back restitution. They tried to contact me through mutual friends and distant relatives for months, but I held firm to my boundaries. Eventually, the attempt stopped. I heard through the grapevine that they blamed me for Jason's incarceration, telling people that I could have saved him but chose money over family. The irony was rich, coming from people who had chosen money and status over me my entire life. A year later, I was promoted to accounting manager at my firm. Sarah and I celebrated with expensive steaks and good wine. Marcus and Carmen invited me over for Sunday dinners, with their extended family giving me a glimpse of what healthy family relationships looked like. I started dating a kind man named David, who treated my achievements like they mattered. My therapist helped me understand that cutting off toxic family members was not cruel or selfish. It was necessary self-preservation. Some relationships cannot be repaired because they were never healthy to begin with. My family's love was conditional on my willingness to be invisible and available, and those were not conditions I could accept anymore. The money I saved stayed in my account, growing with interest and smart investments. I used some of it for a down payment on a larger house in a better neighborhood. Some went toward a master's degree program that would advance my career even further. The rest remains my security blanket, proof that I can take care of myself without anyone's help. I learned that family is not automatically deserving of your loyalty, trust, or resources just because you share DNA. Real family shows up when you need them. Real family celebrates your successes without making it about someone else. Real family does not disappear when you are broken and show up only when they need something from you. Sometimes saying no to family is how you say yes to yourself, and that might be the best decision you ever make. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Subscribe for more real stories about setting boundaries and choosing yourself. Remember, your worth is not determined by how much you sacrifice for others, but by how well you honor your own needs and values. Thank you for listening, and may you always have the courage to put yourself first when it truly matters.